0314 local, Kalynivka approaches, 9 kilometers east of Chasiv Yar. 2 TOS-1A Solntsepyok launchers idle in a tree line, the Russian 98th Guards Airborne, considered untouchable. 24 thermobaric rockets sit in the tubes, warheads armed, waiting for a fire order that will incinerate a 24th Mechanized Brigade dugout line at first light. A Furia recon UAV has been watching them for 11 minutes. 4 kilometers back, 2 fiber-optic FPVs are already spooling wire. A $6 million Russian weapon system is about to be erased by 2 drones that cost $2,400 each. 90 seconds. That is the entire window. This is Fury Military, where we break down the battles, quietly rewriting this war, system by system, kill chain by kill chain. Stay with this. What you're about to hear is the 90-second loop that the 414th Separate UAV Regiment, the unit Ukraine calls Magyar's birds, built to reach into a sanctuary the Russian Airborne treated as physics. 2 TOS-1A launchers destroyed. 1 TZM reload truck as a secondary. Confirmed by Astra geolocation. Admitted, the next morning, by Rybar. But before we walk the loop, a question worth planting. In a kill chain with a recon drone, a 155mm howitzer battery, and a fiber-optic FPV pair, which link actually decided this engagement? Was it A, the Furia that found them? B, the Bohdana battery that suppressed the escort? Or C, the fiber-optic FPVs themselves that ignored the entire Russian EW dome? Hold your answer. Drop it in the comments. I'll tell you which at the end. And the answer surprises most people. Chasiv Yar sits on the high ground west of Bakhmut. Whoever holds it looks down onto Kostiantynivka, Druzhkivka, the whole spine of the Ukrainian rear in Donetsk. Russia has been trying to take it since the spring of 2024. 2 years later, the 98th Guards Airborne is still grinding the Kalynivka Ivanivske approaches with the same tool it has used from the beginning, thermobaric fire. The TOS-1A Solntsepyok, literally, in Russian, the little sun, is a 24-tube multiple rocket launcher on a T-72 chassis that fires 220mm fuel-air rockets. It doesn't kill with fragmentation. It kills with overpressure, by consuming the oxygen in every dugout, cellar, and tree-lined trench inside a footprint the size of 6 football fields. Russian doctrine treats a 2-launcher salvo as sufficient to erase a company position. The Ukrainian 24th Mechanized Brigade has been on the receiving end of that math for months. Here is the sanctuary myth. TOS-1A has a firing range of 6 to 9 kilometers. Short, very short for the modern battlefield. Russian planners understood this from day one, so they treated the launcher the way you treat a fragile, expensive tool. Keep it far back, bring it forward only for the shot, fire, leave. Standard doctrine says the launcher is inside its exposure window for roughly 90 seconds. Pull up to the pre-surveyed firing point, elevate the tubes, salvo, drop the tubes, roll out. The 98th Airborne's leadership treated the 12 to 15-kilometer rear as beyond reach, because they had done the math on Ukrainian counter-battery loops as they existed in 2023 and 2024. No Ukrainian sensor-to-shooter chain, they believed, could close a 90-second window at that depth. That belief is the character in this story. That belief is what died at Kalynivka. The 414th Magyar's Birds Regiment does not fly like a normal drone unit. It is named for its commander, Robert Magyar Brovdy, Ukrainian-Hungarian, one of the earliest drone innovators of this war, now running what is essentially the country's flagship UAV formation. Under Magyar, the 414th operates as an integrated kill chain, recon in the air, EW mapped from the ground, FPV shooters pre-positioned, artillery on standby, all wired through Delta, Ukraine's real-time battlefield awareness network, which shares target coordinates across services in seconds. Delta is not a chat app. It is the reason a Bohdana howitzer battery 17 kilometers back can be aiming at the same grid as a fiber-optic FPV team 4 kilometers out from the target, at the same instant, without either crew picking up a phone. 0303 local. The Furia, a Ukrainian-built fixed-wing recon UAV, 4-meter wingspan, 12-hour endurance, thermal and electro-optical payload, is loitering at 2,800 meters over the Kalynivka salient. At that altitude, the Furia is above most Russian small arms and manpads envelopes, and its acoustic signature is useless at that range. The operator, running the feed through Delta, sees a heat signature that shouldn't be there. A stationary MTLB chassis in a tree line, engine hot. Next to it, a wheeled truck with a distinctive silhouette, the TZM reload vehicle. 2 crews visible in thermal, moving with the deliberate pace of a fire mission preparation. This is not an infantry outpost. This is a firing point. The operator zooms, confirms the tube array. TOS-1A. And behind it, 300 meters back in a second tree line, a second launcher, tubes elevated. 2 Solntsepyoks, $12 million of Russian hardware, at export prices, in one Ukrainian sensor's field of view. The Furia crew pushes the grid to Delta. Within 11 seconds, the coordinates are on 3 screens: the 43rd Artillery Brigade's Bohdana battery, the 414th FPV team pre-positioned at a farm 4 kilometers west, and the regiment's electronic warfare cell tracking the Russian Pol-21 jamming dome that blankets everything in that sector below 300 meters. The Pol-21 is the reason ordinary radio-controlled FPVs cannot reach that tree line. It is a distributed jammer network. Dozens of small emitters saturating the drone bands, GPS, and command uplinks across a 15-kilometer radius. Against radio-controlled FPVs, Pol-21 works. Against fiber-optic FPVs, it does absolutely nothing, because a fiber-optic drone is not receiving radio at all. It is trailing a hair-thin optical cable back to the operator, up to 20 kilometers long, immune to jamming by physics. Russian doctrine has not caught up to that. The 98th Airborne's ground commander is watching a Pol-21 status board that shows green. He believes his airspace is clean. It is not. The asymmetry, bare, a TOS-1A Solntsepyok, at Russian export catalog price, runs around $6 million per unit. Its production line is a single facility, Omsktransmash, in Omsk, which, per Defense Express open source estimates, is currently producing 3 to 4 replacement launchers per quarter, under Western sanctions on precision machining tools. A fiber-optic FPV in the 414th's inventory, per public procurement filings surfaced by the Ukrainian outlet Militarnyi, costs approximately $2,400. $6 million versus $2,400, 2,500 to 1. And Russia can build 3 of these launchers a quarter. Ukraine can build fiber-optic FPVs by the 1,000 per week. That is the gap. That is the whole video. A second question. Because the count matters. Militarnyi maintains a public tracker of confirmed Russian TOS-1A losses, geolocated, photographed, cross-referenced with Russian milblogger admissions. How many TOS-1A launchers has that tracker logged as destroyed since October 2025, the point at which Ukrainian fiber-optic FPV production hit industrial scale? Is it 11? Is it 19? Or is it 27? Hold that number. We come back to it, and it matters more than this single engagement. 0307. The Bohdana battery, a Ukrainian-built 155mm self-propelled howitzer on a wheeled chassis, now produced domestically at more than 20 a month after Kramatorsk area production dispersed, receives the fire mission. The battery commander does not get the tubes. Not directly. The TOS-1A launchers are dug into a tree line with a berm behind them. A 155 shell landing near them will damage them, but it will also scatter the crews and send the vehicles rolling before a second salvo can adjust. Ukraine solved that problem by 2024. The Bohdana is not the killer here. The Bohdana is the suppressor. 300 meters ahead of the TOS-1A firing point, on a small rise, sits a Zu-23-2, a Soviet twin-barreled 23mm anti-aircraft cannon, mounted on a light truck. It is there to shoot down FPVs. Its crew is awake. Its barrels are elevated. On paper, it has a reasonable chance of catching an FPV in its tracer envelope during the drone's terminal dive. So the Bohdana fires first. 2 155mm rounds, likely M864, or the Ukrainian domestic equivalent, both carrying submunitions. Cluster airbursts, time to detonate over the Zu-23-2 position. The escort gun is not destroyed. It does not need to be destroyed. Its crew is put on the ground. Its optics are showered with fragments. And for the next 40 seconds, nobody is standing at its controls. The window is open. 0308. 2 fiber-optic FPVs, launched from a tree line 4 kilometers west of the TOS-1A firing point, drop to 12 meters altitude and begin the approach nap of the Earth. Following a drainage ditch, the operators have flown in daylight rehearsals for a week. The cable pays out behind them. The operators are watching first-person video feeds identical to a video game display except the video is arriving through a strand of glass instead of a radio frequency. The Pol-21 dome is still green on the Russian panel. It sees nothing, because there is nothing radiating to see. 64 seconds into the engagement, something almost breaks it. The lead FPV, call it FPV-1, snags its fiber on a low branch at the edge of the drainage ditch. The video feed drops for a beat, not permanently. Fiber optic cable is fragile in exactly this way, and every 414th operator has lost a run to a tree, a wire, a barbed fence, a curious dog. On the 6th night of TOS-1A hunting in this sector, the entire program had been ordered stood down after 2 consecutive fiber snags cost the unit a launch pair with nothing to show for it. Magyar himself, per unit reporting, overrode the stand down. Fly again, tonight, tighter route, lower approach. The lead FPV in this engagement is the 4th flown against a Solntsepyok that week. The feed comes back within 2 seconds. The operator has already put the drone into an autonomous hover, so it hasn't drifted off course. He resumes control. He continues. 0309, plus 20 seconds. FPV-1 clears the tree line and sees the target. Not the launcher's armor, the launcher's tubes. 24 rocket motors, 24 warheads, sitting elevated at their firing angle. The operator does not aim for the driver's compartment. He does not aim for the engine. He aims for the reload rack, the exposed slab of thermobaric fuel-air warheads waiting to be fired. He dives. Detonation. FPV-1's shaped charge warhead, approximately 800 grams of high explosive with a copper liner, penetrates the reload rack. The reload rack contains fuel-air explosive. The result is not a puncture. It is sympathetic detonation of the entire remaining rocket load on Launcher 1. The Furia's thermal feed, still overhead, shows a fireball that briefly saturates the sensor. Every rocket that was going to burn out a Ukrainian dugout at dawn goes up on the launcher itself. FPV-2, 200 meters behind on its own cable, has already committed to Launcher 2. Same profile, same target, the tubes, not the hull. The 98th Airborne crew on Launcher 2 has by now heard the first detonation, but they have nowhere to go. The vehicle takes 40 seconds to move under power. FPV-2 dives. Second detonation. Second cook-off. The TZM reload truck between them, carrying more rocket propellant, catches fragments, and shortly begins burning on its own. The confirmed secondary. 90 seconds. From Furia lock-on to sympathetic detonation of both launchers. $6 million, twice, plus a reload truck, erased by 2 fiber-optic drones costing $4,800 in total, $2,500 to 1, delivered in 90 seconds. Through a Pol-21 dome, the Russian ground commander was still watching, still green. At the moment, his rear tree line turned into a fireball. The Bohdana battery ceases fire. The Furia stays on station. Astra, the OSINT collective that geolocates Russian battlefield events using visible landmarks, shadows, and social media residue, will have the coordinates published within 11 hours, matched to a specific tree line northeast of Kalynivka. Rybar, the Russian millblogger channel that normally sanitizes losses, will admit the next morning that 2 TOS-1A were lost to enemy FPV action in the Chasiv Yar sector, under investigation. How very vague. When Rybar hedges, the loss is confirmed. If you're still with me, and if you're following this level of detail, you probably want more of it. Subscribe to Fury Military. Every kill chain, every system, every sanctuary myth Russia is still clinging to, walked through step by step until the physics of it makes sense. The zoom out, because a single engagement is never just an engagement. Militarnyi's public loss tracker, the same one the quiz asked about, currently logs 27 Russian TOS-1A destroyed since October 2025. 27. Against an Omsktransmash production line that Defense Express, citing sanctions tracking analysis by the Royal United Services Institute, estimates at 3 to 4 replacement launchers per quarter. Do the arithmetic. In 9 months, Ukraine has destroyed roughly 2 years of Russian TOS-1A production. The pre-war Russian inventory, per CSIS open source estimates, was somewhere between 40 and 50 active launchers across all TOS variants. That inventory is being consumed at a rate the industrial base cannot cover. The Kremlin knows this, which is why the official line has quietly shifted. Peskov, in a June briefing, described the TOS-1A as the most feared weapon of the special military operation, whose reputation alone shapes the battlefield. Reputation alone. Read that again. When your press secretary starts leaning on the reputation of a weapons system rather than its presence, you are telling the world you are running out of the physical objects. An export ban on precision machining tools to guarantee your own military can get replacement chassis parts is a quiet confession of exactly the shortage the official line denies. You cannot insist your thermobaric artillery arm is intact and simultaneously admit that the launchers only need to be feared, not fielded. Russian command called that 12 to 15 kilometer rear untouchable. Censors don't care what Russian command called it. Distance was armor. It wasn't. Doctrine was armor. It wasn't. A green light on a Pole 21 status board was armor. It wasn't. The sanctuary was a story, and stories don't stop fiber-optic cable. There is a broader shift underneath all of this, and it is what Fury will keep coming back to. The TOS-1A was built for a war Russia expected. A war of mass, of overwhelming rear area fires, of oxygen-consuming shocks against dug-in defenders who could not see the launcher in time to shoot back. It was a doctrine weapon. It required the sanctuary of distance to survive. The moment Ukraine industrialized fiber-optic FPVs and wired them into a delta-mediated kill chain with named unit accountability, that sanctuary was gone. Not degraded. Gone. The TOS-1A now has to be treated the way Ukraine has learned to treat every high-value Russian asset in this war. Assume it is seen. Assume the kill chain is closing. Assume 90 seconds is enough. A weapon that requires 90 seconds of stationary exposure to fire a salvo, in a battle space where the kill chain closes in 90 seconds, is a weapon that cannot be fielded. The math has stopped working. If you think tempo beats mass, type Fury in the comments. If you think Russia can still buy its way back to sanctuary with more Pole 21 nodes and more TZM trucks, tell me why below. I read them. The questions from the top. Which link in the kill chain actually decided this engagement? The Furia recon UAV, the Bohdana battery, or the fiber-optic FPVs? The answer is B, the Bohdana. And I told you the answer surprises most people because it is not the drone that dropped the warhead. The Furia found the target. Good, but recon alone doesn't kill it. The fiber-optic FPVs delivered the warhead. Good, but they would have been chewed by the Zu-23-2 in the terminal dive if the escort gun had been alive and aimed. The Bohdana suppressed the Zu-23-2 for the 40 seconds the FPVs needed to close. Take the Bohdana out of the loop and the FPVs die on approach. Take the Furia out and you have no target. Take the FPVs out and you have no penetrator. But the link that made the other two work, that stitched the sensor to the shooter through a hostile close-in defense, was the artillery. 90-second kill chains are not solo. They are combined arms with drones welded in. The other number, 27. 27 confirmed TOS-1A launchers destroyed since October 2025, per Militarnyi. Against Omsktransmash's 3 to 4 per quarter, that is a system-level extinction event in progress. Every Solntsepyok Ukraine erases is a Ukrainian dugout that will not be burned out at dawn. That is what this 90 seconds bought. The tree line outside Kalynivka is quiet now. The wrecks are still there. Astra's coordinates are still pinned. 3 questions worth arguing about. What does the 98th Airborne do at the next rotation? Pull the TOS-1A back to 18 kilometers and lose its firing range against Chasiv Yar entirely, or keep it forward and accept it will not survive the week? Can Omsktransmash surge production without the Western precision machining imports the current sanctions regime is still throttling? And when NATO planners look at this engagement, a $6 million system erased by a $2,400 drone through a jammer dome that saw nothing, what does that do to their own thermobaric and heavy artillery doctrines? Real tempo, real consequences. This is Fury military. The point of this analysis is not to celebrate destruction, but to understand the military and human realities behind it. Because the clearer we see modern war, the clearer the value of deterrence, stability, and a just peace becomes.